Over the years, I've had so many questions about streamer fishing, from gear to lines to leaders and flies and everything in between. So for this series, we're going to start at the very beginning and work our way through. For this kickoff episode, I thought we would start at the very beginning. I'm Brian Wise, and we're covering rods and reels on this episode of Streamer Tactics. For the most part, rod and reel choices are very subjective. What I like, you may not. What you like, your buddy may hate. So just like everything else in streamer fishing, nothing is set in stone, and rods and reels are no different. But there are a few tips that we're going to cover to help you have a starting point to go with when choosing gear to best suit your needs. So we're going to kick this off with rods, and more precisely rod length. The first thing you have to ask yourself is what kind of water you're going to fish most. Lakes or rivers, small tight streams or big open water. These questions will help you figure out what rod length you should probably lean toward. If the vast majority of the time you're going to fish lakes, this one's pretty easy. On lakes you obviously have no worries about hanging trees in your backcast or anything like that. So you should probably start with a 9-foot rod and maybe go longer from there. Sometimes a 9.5-foot rod or even longer can help you with the wind. Musky guys, it can help you with the figure 8, keep the fly a little deeper on the figure 8, stuff like that. So chances are, if you're fishing lakes, start with a 9-foot rod, maybe go a little longer from there, depending on what you end up landing on. If you fish big open rivers the majority of the time, this one's pretty easy. I would go 9-foot and don't look back. There's never been a time when I was fishing a 9-foot rod on a big open river and thought, man, I wish I had a 9.5-foot rod. Not once. So grab a 9-foot rod, call it good. Now on small streams, this is where things can get a little tricky. A lot of times the first thought when streamer fishing a smaller stream is to go to a smaller rod. And this isn't always the case. Some small streams are just that. They're small, but they're open to longer cast and they're not super tight and technical. In this case, a 9-foot rod will work perfectly. Now, if you are fishing a super tight technical stream, you still want to get away with the longest rod that you feel comfortable casting. There are plenty of rods that are under that 9-foot mark that are great rods, and they still come in higher line weights. A lot of the bass specific rods are 7 feet 11 inches or somewhere around there, and they still come in up to 8-9 weights. So you can still fish big streamers on smaller technical water and not have to have a 9-foot rod. Now that we've covered rod lengths, let's go to rod weights. This is the biggie. When you're looking at a rod weight you want to choose, there are several things you need to keep in mind. Questions like how big is the average fly you're going to use? What kind of line are you going to use the most? Sink tips, full sink lines, floating line. How long of a cast you're going to make, and what kind of wind you're going to run into any given day. These questions will help you figure out the rod weight that'll best suit your needs. If you're going to fish big flies on sinking lines, on big rivers, on windy days, in my eyes, I jump 8 weight all the way. For trout, anyway. An 8 weight is a lot more versatile than a lot of people think. These aren't the old days where anything above a 7 weight is considered saltwater. Anymore, manufacturers are making as many 8 weight rods that are not saltwater specific as they are saltwater specific 8 weight rods. So on the big flies, sinking lines, big water, that 9-foot 8 weight range is where I'm gonna land every time. So if you fish smaller flies on sinking lines, stuff can change a little bit. If you know for a fact that you will never be fishing a fly that's bigger than 6 or 7 inches and you're not gonna be fishing a really, really fast sinking line, I'll start leaning toward that 6 weight mark. I'm leaning smallmouth and smaller trout stream, that type of stuff here. A faster action 6 weight can get a lot done, especially if you're fishing an intermediate line or a floating line or maybe like a T3 6 weight, somewhere around there. 6 weights are pleasant, they're nice to cast, nothing to it. We covered rods, so now we're going to cover reels. And in my eyes, reels are the easiest thing out of all these things that we're going to pick from. I'm a guy that likes flashy, vibrant colors and stuff like that. I'm basically a rainbow trout in guy form. So when I look for a reel, I look for one that catches my eye as much as anything else. The reason being, the old adage that a fly reel is probably not a whole lot more than just a fly line holder is not that wrong. And with the advances in reel design, the most affordable reel now still probably has a better drag than the best reel 10 years ago. So reels are probably the most subjective thing we will cover in this episode. What I look for in a reel is, obviously, I like them to look good. I like them to sound good. I want them to be bulletproof. This Alpha 3 is probably 7 years old, 5 to 7 years old. It's got some scratches on it. It's beautiful, works perfect. First and foremost, I'm a trout and striper guy. Now, all modern reels have a great drag system. That's just it. They do. I don't think you'll run into a modern reel anywhere that can't handle the biggest brown trout in the world. Ooh. I said that, didn't I? But we'll cover my reasons why I don't think having the greatest, most amazing drag in the world is the best thing in the trout world in a different video whenever we cover fighting fish. But basically I can sum it up in one sentence. I don't want to put a big brown trout on a reel. I want to put him in the net. So now that we've covered everything in this video, I really want to reiterate that this is very, very subjective material here. If you truly like a 7-weight over a 6-weight, for whatever reason that is, that's the best rod for you. If you want a super high-end reel for the sound or the craftsmanship or whatever reason you have, then that's the best reel for you. One of the biggest reasons this streamer thing even had a chance to happen is because a few people decided to go against the rules to see what might happen. So if you're not breaking some rules now and then, you're probably not learning as much as you could.